Hi, welcome back to another episode of Talking Sports with Brandon. This is the Week 5 NFL recap where we did my five picks. I felt confident about them, but as it turns out, I did go with 2 and 3 this week. Not great, obviously. Our record is 11, 13, and 1, so it's still not over 500 yet. Still not even back to 500, but I definitely felt confident in my picks. We'll go over them. There was definitely a couple different games this week that I want to talk about. Just give some insights, some details I want to say, and then that will be it for this episode. The next episode, the preview for Week 6, will be out in the next couple days after you see this. So definitely tune into that one because that's going to be a really good episode. There's a lot of good games in Week 6. There's obviously two heavy hitters in that one, but staying on this episode though, I'll just start with going over my five picks. So we'll start with the London game, and this was definitely a game I wanted to talk about anyways. But Giants Packers, I had Packers -8. Obviously they didn't cover; they lost the game. If you woke up early enough to watch that, but the Giants won 27-22. I you know the Packers are a curious case, to be honest, because they're not the same offense that they were. You would think that their defense would be better, but it's really not. Like they definitely have playmakers on that defense, but they definitely were not terrible last year. Their defense, it was at times it was the better part of their team, but of course the offense. Rodgers wins MVP. They still have Adams. Obviously the running back duo they were definitely driven by their offense last year. But with Adams leaving, MVS leaving, Rodgers another year older, the offensive line not as good as it's always been. You would think that the defense would kind of take over for that team, and it's just really not the case. That defense just has not been that good so far this year, and it was really highlighted in this game. So, Daniel Jones did play this game. He definitely wasn't bad. I mean, 21 of 27 for 217 yards. He really wasn't that bad. I mean, the offense, I mean, again, if you look at this game as a whole, it is kind of surprising that the Giants did win because they were down 17-3 at one point, and they went into halftime down 20-10. And the Packers hadn't played amazing in the first half, but they were doing the things that they needed to do to win this game. And again, they scored 20 points in the first half. I mean, that means they scored 2 points the rest of the way, and it was the only reason they scored those 2 points was because the Giants had to punt late and they were backed up, very close to their end zone. So they just took the safety instead of possibly getting it blocked and then it's a touchdown and then the game's tied. So that's the only reason they scored those 2 points. So basically they didn't even do anything. It was just the Giants giving them a free 2 points knowingly. So it's just, again, it's curious. It's just odd that they can't seem to, their offense has just been so bad. And I know, again, they don't have a lot of receiving options. The offensive line is getting healthier. They still have the great running back duo. That's definitely the driving force of the offense. But it's, with LaFleur and with Rodgers, you would think that they'd be able to figure something out. For the first couple weeks, if you want to say, yeah, they're still trying to see which way to go, how to really run this offense. I can understand that, but we've already played 5 games, and the fact that they really can't figure anything out and what to do is concerning because, I mean, you look at this division, you'd think that, yeah, they're probably going to win this division, but no, the Vikings are actually 4-1. They already beat the Packers, and even though the Vikings are definitely hit or miss a lot of the times, they're already a game and a half up on them. So they're gonna have to start. The Packers are gonna have to start figuring this thing out very quickly because they could very much lose this division. And I think that they'd still be able to make a wild card. The NFC is not the best division, or the best conference, but like they're gonna have to look a lot better soon. I mean, they play the Jets this week. Jets have looked good. I think the Packers would win that game, but at the same time, I thought they'd win this game. So against the Giants, and the Packers are home, I guess, which helps. And they play Washington, so if you could win these next 2 games, go to 5-2, feel a lot better. Okay, now you're 3 games over 500. They have a really tough matchup with the Bills after Washington, so obviously that's probably a loss. I mean, obviously you're not going to look at it like that, but just looking at it in reality, that's probably a loss against the Bills at Buffalo as well. So you really need to win these next 2 games because if you lose one of these next 2, again, you're probably losing to the Bills. So you're looking at being 4-4 if you split these next 2. that's not gonna cut it, to be honest. And they're probably around a 500 team. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 9-8, or if they maybe go 10-7. I think that's probably the highest they can go. I think they probably are a 9-8 team. Unless Rodgers picks it up, they find something in the offense. The defense really steps up and plays like a top 5, top 7 defense, and can cause turnovers and make plays for them to make the offense easier. Those things need to happen really fast, because I don't see it. They just don't look like a really good team. Even if they do make the playoffs, I'd be surprised if they even won a game. It depends on who they play in that first round, but I don't see this team as being a threat. I think people went into the season knowing that they had some losses and some subtractions on their team, but they still thought that they'd be the Packers and they win this division pretty easily. But that's just not the case. It's not going to happen this year. So they need something to happen really fast for them. But for the Giants, I mean, hey, they're 4-1. I mean, I'm still not the biggest believer in them. I mean, are they still? I guess, are they a good team? I don't even know if I'd say that, because the offense is just Barkley. Like, if you can somehow take him out or just get pressure on Jones, they're not going to do anything offensively. They have no receivers on the outside. The defense is okay. It can definitely stop opponents and at least limit teams. But if they're not going to cause turnovers and get a lot of sacks and really just do a lot of negative plays for the other team's offense, this team, if you're forcing the Giants to go drive down multiple times, 70, 80 yards for touchdowns, it's not going to happen. They'll at best settle for field goals, but most of the time they're probably punting. So I'm not the biggest believer in them, even at 4-1. Again, I saw them in person, so I know what I saw, and it just was not what a 4-1 team looks like. So we'll see what happens with them. They're definitely still in the mix. I mean, they have the Ravens this week. That's obviously a tough matchup for them. But then they have the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Lions. I mean, those are all winnable games right there. Not one of those 4 teams you would go into that matchup saying, oh, yeah, the other team's easily going to win that game. So, let's say they lose this week to Baltimore. They're 4-2. But then those next 4 games, I mean, they could easily go 3-1 in those games. And then what do you know? You're 7-3? I mean, you cannot argue with being 7-3, even if you're not, again, what I would say, I think what most people would say is that they're not a true, playoff team and they'd really make noise in the playoffs. But you're 7-3. I mean, that's better. That's going to be better than probably every team in the NFC except for, I don't know, four teams probably that would have a better record. 3 teams would have a better record than 7-3. So, we'll see what happens. I think that if they can be 7-3, even 6-4 after those games, they do play the Cowboys Thanksgiving. So going into that matchup, if they're 6-4 or 7-3, they for sure have a shot at the playoffs, no doubt. I mean, at the wild card spots in the NFC, with the way that the Packers are playing, the teams out west, the Rams have looked really bad. So I would assume the Rams are probably a better team than the Giants, but the way that they're playing right now, they're not. So. Well, we'll see what happens, but you definitely, if you're a Giants fan, you have to be happy with the way that they're playing. I mean, they're playing competitive ball, and they're 4-1. I mean, when was the last time they were 4-1? So that was the first game. That was my first loss of the week. Second game that I picked was Lions Patriots. I had Lions plus 3.5. I mean, they lost 29-0. I don't really have much to say about this game. I mean, I saw that the way that they played last week against Seattle, and they still put up 45 points. I wasn't expecting that, but I was at least expecting, with Amon-Ra St. Brown back, with some guys back, tough matchup in New England, but, with Bailey Zappi at quarterback, I didn't think that they'd get killed like that. But they did. The defense for them is obviously terrible, but when you score 0 points, you can't really blame the defense that much, if at all. So, not much to say from this game. I think the Lions, somehow they're 1-4. It feels like they probably should have a better record, but then at the same time, it does feel like they should be 1-4. And then the Patriots, they're 2-3. I mean, I still don't think they're one of the best. I still think they're one of the worst teams in the AFC. And when Mac Jones got injured, I thought that that would really be the end. But they played competitive. I mean, they almost beat Green Bay in Green Bay, which could say a little bit more about the Packers, but. And then they beat the Lions 29-0 at home. So You'd have to, I guess, we'll see what happens if Mac Jones, when he comes back. If he comes back, we'll see how Bailey Zappi continues to play. If that defense can still play at that somewhat high level that they've been known to play at. The running game is obviously what they're leaning on, and that's their strongest suit anyways, even if Mac Jones is in there, is that running game with Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. But, you know, I'll be curious to see how they play the next couple of games. They're 2-3. Can they stay around? Can they hover around 500? I mean, in the AFC, it's gonna be almost impossible to make a wild card at being like 500, or being 8-9 or 9-8. You probably have to have that 10-win mark to make the wild card in the AFC. But they may be a little bit more competitive than I thought. But we'll see. I don't know for sure. I think the defense almost has to play perfect every game, and the running game has to be on for them to really have chances in games. But it was at least a good start against the Lions in the first true start for Bailey Zappi. But third game, so again, that was a loss on 0-2. Third game, Seahawks Saints. I had Seahawks plus 5.5. They lost 39-32. I knew they'd put up points. Their offense, they could really move the ball and they could score. And they had two big touchdowns, one to Lockett, one to Metcalf. I just, that defense, though, how are you giving up 39 points to the Saints? And it was an unlikely guy who's going to put up all those points. It was Taysom Hill. He had 4 touchdowns in this game, 2 rushing. Or did he have, I think he had three rushing and 1 throwing. I mean, I guess he kind of does this once or twice a year, but it was just the one guy he had to stop, and it was him. And, again, no Michael Thomas, no Jameis Winston in this game. Olave got a concussion like halfway through the game, where I will say he did score a touchdown on the play where he got a concussion, but I don't even know how that was a touchdown, because he caught it, and then as he's going to the ground, and it was like, it was a jump ball. He catches it in the air. When he lands, he's, going down to the ground, and then the ball comes out. I don't know how that's a catch, to be honest. Like, I was very surprised that was upheld as a touchdown, or they maybe even overturned the call on the field to change it to a touchdown, but that counted, which made it 24-19 at that point. So, I mean, that could have been a big play, because that probably shouldn't have been a touchdown in that game, which, if you're looking at the plus 5.5, they lost by 7. That could have made a difference. They kick a field goal there, it's a 4-point game instead of being a 7-point game. But again, I felt confident in Seattle because they could put up points. I just didn't think the defense would play this bad. Geno Smith looked really good. I mean, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know he had some rushing yards as well. I thought that them and the Bears would be the worst teams in the NFL. Definitely the NFC, but the Bears, I think, are. I guess they've been somewhat competitive this year, and the fact that they do have 2 wins is very surprising. But the Seahawks are definitely better than I thought. They can move the ball offensively. At times, their defense can play okay, but if as long as they can move the ball, they can put up points. Geno Smith, he doesn't really turn the ball over that much. When you think of kind of a career backup, you think he's, the reason he's not starting is that he turns the ball over too much. He makes bad decisions. Can't read defenses. Like, he's doing a good job at that. And again, they have playmakers on their team in Metcalf, Lockett. Rashad Penny did break his leg in this one, so he is out for the year. But they have Kenneth Walker, who was a stud at Michigan State last year at college, so he's going to step into the RB1 role. So I don't know how much they're losing at running back. I think it's maybe minimal, if anything. So they still have a decent offense, and at least guys who can do things on that team. So I thought they would maybe win 4 games this season. I think they could probably win 6. I wouldn't want to say 7. I think 6 is probably the mark they'd go to, because of that offense. And again, they are in a division and a conference where you will face teams that are very similar to you. So as long as you're not making mistakes and your defense can step up, you'll win those games. So we'll see. But they're 2-3. Saints are 2-3 as well. We'll see when Jameis comes back. We'll see what happens with that team. They're very up and down, very hit or miss. I think people kind of peg them as possibly winning that division this year. And I think it would be possible if they just played more consistent. I guess weren't injured as well. But because Tampa really hasn't looked that good. Tampa did win this week against the Falcons 21-15, but they have not looked good in one game that they've played in so far. So the fact that they're 3-2 so far in the season is very surprising, just because of the way that they played. But I guess you have to be lucky to do that. But it does look like they'll probably win that division unless the Saints really turn it around. But that's the only team that could really challenge them for that. The Falcons, obviously, they're not that good, and the Panthers, they're not that good either. So it's really the Saints and the Bucks. We'll see. I mean, it looks like it's gonna be the Bucks, but the Saints can turn it around maybe. But that was my third loss, my final loss of the week. My first win, Steelers Bills -14. This was the one I didn't really want to pick it, even though I kind of like I knew, maybe I didn't know, but I definitely had a strong feeling that the Bills were going to like blow the Steelers out. It's just like when you see 14 points, it's just, I mean, you got to win by more than 2 touchdowns to cover that. But they easily did that. I mean, this game was over. I mean, basically the first, what was it, the second play of the game, whatever it was with 14 minutes left when the game started. There's only been a minute since the game had started. They had a 98-yard touchdown. And it's like, if you're the Steelers fan or you're looking at the Steelers, it's like the Bills, they got the opening kickoff and they muffed it. That's why they were back so far. They're at their 2-yard line. It's 3rd and 10 at their 2-yard line after going incomplete and then a run for no gain. So they get a 98-yard bomb to Gabe Davis, and at that point, like, you're like, okay, maybe, they back them up. They somehow get the muff. They're at the 2-yard line. You back them up. We'll see what happens when they punt. They have good field position, or they block it, or something happens. You think, okay, maybe they can get out to an early lead, or at least control field position. At least do something early to not just let the doors get blown off them. But then it happens right away, and they even get lucky because after that touchdown happened, the Steelers actually muffed the kick, and the Bills recovered, but they missed the field goal, so they got lucky there. But then it was over after that. So this one was very easy. It was 31-3 at the end of the half. Josh Allen had like 350 yards at halftime passing the ball. So this one was no question. Like I've said, the Bills are the best team in the NFL. Went through a couple rocky weeks, but still got a win against Baltimore in that time, and they're back. They're 4-1. They have a good matchup. Again, this is one of the mega matchups for Week 6. Is them and the Chiefs. Great matchup, 4:25 window. So definitely watch that. That's arguably the game of the week. With Cowboys Eagles probably right there, probably under it because the Bills and the Chiefs are the two best teams, but and it's a matchup with the last two playoff games. Obviously last year's game was a great game, so the Bills, not much to say, just that the Bills are definitely still the best team in the NFL. But that was my first win. Then my second win, Raiders Chiefs. Speaking of the Chiefs, they played Monday Night Football. This one I feel confident in because the Raiders always play the Chiefs tough in Kansas City. Now, when it's in Vegas or when it was Oakland, they usually got blown out. And Mahomes is always good. He always beats the Raiders. I think he's only lost like once, maybe twice in his career to the Raiders. I think it's only once, but they always play him tough. And if you're, the Raiders arguably should have won this game. I mean, you're up 17-0, like about halfway through the second quarter in this game. And from that point forward, it went to 20-7, and then after that it was 30-20, or it was 24-20. So the Chiefs went basically 24-3 run against the Raiders, and this was all Travis Kelce. He had 4 touchdowns, only had 7 catches for 25 yards, but he had 4 touchdowns. The Raiders looked good early. Josh Jacobs had a great game. I think he had 150 on the ground. Devontae Adams had 2 touchdowns. He had like 125 in the air. No interceptions for Carr. No bad mistakes, nothing like that. It was just that defense had no chance of keeping up with Mahomes in the offense. And early it looked like they did. Crosby, I think, had 2 sacks in this one. Chandler Jones, I believe, had a sack. I've always talked about Chandler Jones and that he'll, once every 5 games, which is exactly what it was. It was the 5th game of the season. He'll make his presence known. And I thought early in this game, with the way that it started, with the Raiders going down, getting 2 touchdowns, that defensive line attacking Mahomes and putting a lot of pressure on him, it's like, oh, could this be one of these games where the Raiders actually do pull the upset and they kind of dominate them, where the defensive line is just so ferocious that Mahomes has no time in the pocket. But after those first couple drives where they were getting to him, they maybe got to him like once the rest of the game. So that's kind of unacceptable when you have that much momentum early. The defensive line's playing like that. You have Crosby, who's obviously a Pro Bowler to potential All-Pro, kind of guy. it's almost unacceptable to play that way. And again, it's not like the Chiefs were just killing them with like long bombs and they were just doing stuff. It was just they were methodically going down the field, and as soon as Mahomes got time in the pocket, he was just picking and choosing where to go with the ball. Guys were open downfield. Again, it wasn't like 60-yard plays, but it was like 15, 25-yard plays that just kept going and going and going. So, it eventually gets to 30-23 Chiefs. Raiders get a touchdown, 48-yard touchdown to Devontae Adams late to get it to 30-29, and they decide to go for two. Now, there's still 4 minutes left in the game when this happens. Very curious call when it happened because no matter what, even like obviously the Chiefs are going to get the ball back. There's 4 minutes left, and I understand it. You don't want Mahomes, if you're in a tie game, you don't want Mahomes to get the ball, kill the clock, get all the way down to field goal range. Who knows, get a touchdown very late, but at least get in field goal range, give you basically no time. You got to use your timeouts. It's already past the 2-minute warning. Kicks a field goal. Could even be a minute left at that point. It's tough. And the Raiders have a great kicker, but I understand it. But at the same time, if you don't get it, which they didn't get the 2-point conversion, like you had to score anyways. Like no matter what, you had to, even if you got the ball back with 10 seconds left, and it was 30-30, and then the Chiefs got a field goal to make it 33-30, you had to go down and get a field goal anyways. So I just didn't agree with going for it there, because make it a tie ball game, because you know what, the Chiefs kicker, he's a backup. He already missed one kick, and he missed another kick, but it got called back because of a terrible call, a defensive holding call on the Raiders on that. It was a terrible call, but he technically missed one, but he really missed two in that game. He's just not that good of a kicker. So if it is a tie game and they do kill the clock and it comes down to the final minute, 30 seconds, whatever, and they're kicking a game-winning field goal, do they really have that much confidence in him, like to kick that field goal? And how much confidence do you have in him to make that field goal? So at least if he were to miss that, it'd be a tie game, and there'd maybe be some seconds left on the clock. Even if there wasn't, you go to OT. You're in OT. You still have a game to play. You still can win that game. But once you miss that 2-point conversion, they could kill the clock and then the game's over and you don't even have a chance, or you have 10 seconds, 15 seconds with no timeouts. But they did get the ball back. They actually moved it up the field a little bit. I think they got to like midfield, and Devontae Adams hit a play down the sideline where he like bobbled it, so he was incomplete. They would have been on the plus side of the field if he caught that. Definitely in field goal range, or just run like 2 more plays and you're in field goal range. Again, they have a great kicker in Carlson who makes like every kick. He's a great leg. He just makes everything. So that was incomplete. And then I don't know if it was the next play or the play after that where it looked like Adams would have been open. They were doing like a go route, and him and Renfro just ran into each other on the route. So that was 4th down. That was the last play of the game, and they lost. So terrible loss for the Raiders. It's basically just, that's just the Raiders. You're up 17-0 in that game and you lose. Just terrible. They're 1-4 now. I still believe that they're more talented than Denver. I do. But man, like the fact that they're 1-4, a lot of people had them winning this division, or at least very close to winning this division and making a wild card spot. At 1-4, it's going to be very tough. Again, you play these teams in this division, it's going to be really hard to climb back up to 500 and then get over 500. Again, I think 10 wins is what you need. And the fact that there's only 12 games left now in the season and you're already 3 games under, it's going to be tough. They have to play really good football these next couple weeks. I'll tell you their schedule. They play Texans. They play the Texans this week, so you'd think that'd be a win. They play the Saints. That could be tough, but at the same time, the way that the Saints are playing, as long as the Raiders should win that game. But again, who knows? They've been so prone to losing leads and just collapsing late against the Cardinals, obviously. So who knows? But then they play the Jaguars, the Colts. Again, these are games you probably should win. Like, their schedule is not tough coming up. I guess that's really the overall factor from this, is that they're not playing the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Bills coming up. They're playing teams that are rather worse than them or are basically on the same level as them. And those should be wins. Again, Texans, Saints, Jaguars, Colts, Broncos, Seahawks, and then you play the Chargers. Over this stretch of 6 games, you should at least, like if you're the Raiders, you need to be 4-2 at least, but you really need to go 5-1 in these next 6 games. And again, it's going to be tough with the way that they play and have been playing and the inconsistency and the way the defense has been playing. That secondary is not good for them. So they can get killed, in the secondary, but they need that defensive line to step up. You need Chandler Jones to make plays and get sacks, and it's just not going to happen. You want it to happen, but it's not going to happen. Crosby can do everything he wants, but if it's only one guy, you could double him, you could chip him, you could make your game plan to him, and he's not good enough to where he's like an elite player to where it's like an Aaron Donald or a Micah Parsons or a TJ Watt where like he can actually wreck your game. He's going to make plays, but he's not going to wreck your offense and wreck your game plan. So they're just in a tough spot right now. The Chiefs, obviously, now they're 4-1. It looks like they could win this division. I mean, they already beat the Chargers. Chargers are still going through things. But yeah, that's going to come down. It will still come down to the end. They still play each other in a couple soon, or at least at some point in the season, obviously, the Chargers and the Chiefs. That will be a huge game in deciding who wins this division. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But those are my five picks for this week. Like I said, I went 2-3. I'm 11-13-1 for the season now. So definitely looking to try to get over 500 next week. Hopefully we get like a 4-1 week. That'd be huge. But we'll see. But some other games I wanted to talk about. Speaking of the Chargers-Browns game. Chargers win 30-28. I really just want to talk about one play. So it's 4th and 2. This is right at the end of the game. And so I'll tell you the time, I'll tell you where they were, everything like that. So Chargers get the ball back after Brown's interception at the goal line. This is right at the goal line. Jacoby Brissett, he probably could have ran for a touchdown. It was 3rd and 7, so he also technically could have got a first down too, but he definitely should have ran the ball. He at least would have got more yards if you were going to go for it on 4th down, if you wanted to, or just kick the field goal, whatever it was. You were going to be a lot closer. I mean, I guess at that point they probably would have kicked the field goal because it was 30-28. But he gets picked off at the goal line. Chargers get the ball back with 2 minutes 44 seconds left. So we're past the 2-minute warning. It's 3rd and 3. The Chargers are at their 44-yard line, so basically midfield. Browns have used all their timeouts. They have no timeouts left. And 3rd and 3, Austin Eckler goes for 2 yards. So it's 4th and 1 at the Chargers' 46-yard line. Again, 1 minute 13 seconds left. Browns have no timeouts. They need to get a field goal to win. You could punt. You could pin them back. Again, there's going to be about a little bit more than a minute left at the time that happens. Let's say they're inside their 10, 15-yard line. That means they got to go, 60 plus yards to get into field goal range, like a true field goal range. I mean, that's a lot to ask for Jacoby Brissett, for one of their best players, Nick Chubb. They're not going to be running the ball. They're going to be throwing it. So it's a lot to ask for in a situation like that. But instead, they decide to go for it. And they try to do a slant. It gets broken up. So instead of pinning them back where they had to drive down the field to get a field goal to win the game, you give them the ball back at your 45-yard line with no timeouts and 1 minute 13 left in the game. Just crazy decision. I mean, Brandon Staley's done a lot of weird things over his 1+ years as being a head coach of the Chargers. This was one of the. I mean, these are two teams who are prone and have a history of just losing and choking late in games. They somehow just randomly they'll somehow just lose a game. It's just like they're easily winning. Like the Browns this year against the Jets, they're obviously going to win that game and then they just lose. Like both of these franchises are known for that. So it's funny that they were playing each other and this happened. So they go for it. They don't get it. It's at the 45-yard line. They get 10 yards to Amari Cooper. They go. Then they get no gain on a run. Then they do an incomplete pass. So it's 3rd and 10 at the 35-yard line. They go incomplete again. So they really didn't move that much. They just got 10 yards, but it was a big 10 yards. So they have a 54-yard field goal to win the game. This was 16 seconds left in the game. Rookie kicker, he made a game-winning kick a couple weeks ago, but against the Panthers actually, and I guess that was week 1. And then 54-yard field goal, he misses. So if you're the Chargers, I mean, you somehow get lucky. They miss. I mean, if they would have lost that game with the talent that this team has and the expectations, a lot of questions would have been asked about Staley. I mean, still questions were asked about it. And it's just a crazy decision to do. I mean, I've said he has a history of doing this so far, but why not just punt? Just make them drive down the field. I mean, like I was saying, they really couldn't move the ball except like Nick Chubb had a monster game in this one. He had 134 and 2 touchdowns. Like, besides him, they really weren't moving the ball down the field, throwing through the air. It was just all being set up by the run. So force them to throw the ball. I mean, they had no timeouts. Like, just don't let them go out of bounds. Everything's short. They're probably gonna run out of time anyways. But like I said, they did win. They did get lucky. He missed a 54-yard field goal. Browns are 2-3. Chargers are 3-2. And, if you're the Browns, you could be so much better than 2-3. I mean, you could most likely be 4-1 with the games that they've lost. I mean, they lost to the Falcons 23-20. They lost to the Jets, like I said. Even this game, like it was neck and neck the whole way. They got lucky with the Chargers going for it, so they possibly could have won. I mean, you could be at least 3-2, but probably 4-1, and this just isn't good for when Watson comes back. Like, you need it to be 500, or you at least need to be anywhere from a game under 500, 500, or a game over 500, or I guess anything better than 500. But like, the schedule that they've had early is not that tough, and the fact that they're 2-3, they still have a good team. I mean, this defense isn't good. It's only Myles Garrett on this defense. I guess Denzel Ward too, but this defense is not playing well as a unit, which is a problem, because if you're going to be a run team, you need your defense to play well, because like they should, because you're taking clock away, you're wearing out the other team. So once your defense gets on the field, they should be fresh, they should be ready to go. They have decent pass rushers, obviously Garrett being the main one, but it's weird what's going on. The play calling is weird. So they play the Patriots this week, and then the Ravens, then the Browns, and the Dolphins, and the Bills, and the Bucks. Like, this is where the schedule gets tough, and you need it to be over 500 going into the schedule. It's going to be tough for them to win a lot of these games coming up. Patriots is going to be tough. I mean, like, I think the Browns are better, but it's two teams that are very similar. They rely on the run, and they hope that their defenses are going to come through when they're on the field. So Ravens is going to be a really tough game. Bengals, Dolphins, the Tua should be back by that game, you would assume. That's not for another 4 weeks basically. So Bills is obviously, that's probably a loss. Bucks, I mean, they haven't played great, but it's still a team with a lot of talent. So that's, they're 2-3, Chargers are 3-2. That was the game from the 1 o'clock window. That was, it came down right to the end, obviously. Another game I wanted to talk about was the Eagles-Cardinals game. Just touch on it. Cardinals, I mean, I thought this game, maybe not get blown out, but definitely lose, pretty handily in this one. The Eagles are obviously a lot better. But the Cardinals stuck in this game. They came down to the end. Cardinals had a chance to tie the game on a field goal. Kyler Murray runs. He slides before the first down, so second down on his run. He slides before the first down, and there's been conflicting reports. I don't know if I've seen an official one. There probably won't be, but he was told to spike it from the sideline because they said he got the first down. Like this, I think in the stadium they said he got the first down on like the scoreboard up top, and on the sideline was telling him to spike the ball. So he spiked it on third down. It was 3rd and 1. So he spikes it. So now it's 4th down. It led to a field goal where they have a kicker who's not that good. Matt Prater is injured, so he didn't kick this game. So it was down to Matt Amendola, who had been shaky all day. I mean, all day he'd been shaky. So he had to kick a 43-yard field goal, and all of his kicks were going right. They were just fading right, and exactly what happened on this one. It was straight, and then just went straight to the right. They missed. They lose the game. That's with 22 seconds left. So, did Kyler spike the ball by himself? He said the sideline did. I think the sideline was saying that he just did it. The chains I think still said 4th down. I think he rather looked at the scoreboard up top, or he just heard it from the sideline saying spike it, so he did it. But they still had a chance to do something. I mean, it was still, at that point, it was still 30 seconds, 25 seconds left. You possibly could have got some more yards and then spiked it or whatever. So I'm not sure if they had a timeout at that point yet. I'm assuming they probably used all their timeouts, but they had no timeouts. But that would have been a huge, it went into overtime against obviously the only undefeated team at the time. To possibly get a win there, it would have been big, but again, it's the Cardinals. That's just what they do. They don't come up big in late situations. I guess the only time was the Raiders game, but you could probably blame the Raiders for that one. But they're 2-3. Eagles move to 5-0, where they obviously have the matchup with the Cowboys Sunday Night Football. If you want to hear my Cowboys video, that will be out just probably before or after this one comes out. So that would be the Cowboys game against the Rams, and then a preview to the Sunday night game against the Eagles. But that's obviously, again, the Bills Chiefs I think is the biggest game, but this is the primetime Sunday night game, so it's, I guess, technically bigger, but that's going to be a great game as well. And then I guess Bengals Ravens. So I said this was a big game for the division. Ravens win 19-17. Definitely, I thought it'd be more high scoring. I thought this would be a game where it's like kind of back and forth. The teams are going down the field. Jamar Chase has had huge games against the Ravens last year. I was thinking Lamar would have a great game. It really wasn't that. It was kind of field goals here and there, just kind of going through. They both threw an interception in this one. Wasn't crazy offense. It was more defense sticking up when they had to. It came down to Joe Burrow had a touchdown with under 2 minutes left in the game to make it 17-16. But the Ravens have the ultimate weapon, which is Justin Tucker. They get into field goal range, 43 yards, nails it, not even a problem. When you have a guy like that, you don't really have to worry. I mean, he's always going to make the field goal. He rarely misses at the end of the game. So as long as you get, I mean, you could kick from 55, 60 yards, and he's the only kicker in the league where if you're 60 yards away and he's kicking a field goal, you honestly feel pretty confident that he's going to make it. So again, 43 yards, that was easy. That was no problem. So Ravens go to 3-2, Bengals 2-3. Again, those are the two teams for the division, and that was a huge game right there. The fact that they beat him head to head, and they're now technically a game and a half up on them. You probably look to the Ravens, and again, the Ravens should be better than 3-2. They should at least be 4-1. You could argue they could be undefeated, but that's if you're betting right now, I would say the Ravens. You'd bet the Ravens to win this division after that win. So we'll see what happens when they meet later in the season. I think they meet. I don't know if it's the last game. It's the last game of the season that they meet. So again, that could be a huge game as well. If they're obviously if it's that game matters to who wins the division, that's a huge game. A last game of the season, it should be a good one. But I would pick the Ravens to win this division. They probably are the better team anyways. The defense is a little suspect in the secondary, but they played better the last couple weeks, and obviously Lamar, as long as he's not, throwing interceptions and can still run the ball that he does, the way he does, they're more potent, they're more explosive than the Bengals are, and the Bengals offensive line is obviously terrible. So those are the games from the week, the big ones, the ones I wanted to talk about. Like I said, check out the week 6 preview video because there's a lot of good games that week. I'll make my 5 picks in that video, and check out my Cowboys video as well, which will be up right after this one. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you in the next episode.